Is EQ taboo? And if it is, should it be? Is there a reason? Now, what am I talking about here? Well, if you followed audiophile circles at all, going back, let's say going back to the 80s, or you notice even today, something called tone controls, bass and treble controls, or bass, mid, and treble sometimes, were commonplace in every single receiver or preamplifier back throughout time, the 60s, the 70s, etc. You had these controls. At some point, audiophile high-end audio manufacturers decided that that was creating problems in the signal path, even though the better preamplifiers of the day had a defeat control so that you could actually take those tone controls out of the signal path completely. But that meant another switch and another point where you had to, the signal was maybe compromised. So to be absolutely purist, manufacturers, and this isn't just the ultra high end, but down into the sort of entry-level integrated amplifiers of the day, started removing tone controls. They ballyhooed this as, wow, it's a massive step forward in terms of sound quality, getting rid of those controls. Personally, I think probably a little of it was the fact that they didn't have to spend the money on those controls, and the circuitry in the analog domain to create a good quality, low noise, low distortion tone control is not a simple thing. So there was cost saved there for sure. This has carried on a mindset where, it was not okay to tamper with the signal path at all. We don't want equalization or equalizers in the system. And again, they were ubiquitous in the 70s and the 80s. Most systems, even if you bought one of those all-in-one rack systems, they almost always had an equalizer. And if you were a kid at the day, you probably put the smiley face curve on it, boosted the bass and the treble, and frankly, probably made everything sound awful. Now, a lot of those EQs or equalizers were very, very bad. I mean, they had bad circuitry that added a lot of noise and a lot of distortion to the signal. But that wasn't always the case. There were some very, very high-end, not just for studio use, but for consumer use, equalizers that were very, very high quality. But EQ and tone controls have become taboo in the mindset of the audiophile. And the question is, should it be? Should that be taboo? Now, I will say that in most cases, that if you tend to listen to well-recorded material, that having any additional processing whatsoever, it doesn't matter what it is, directly in the signal path is not a good thing. If you have a collection of music or your best favorite artists tend to have good recordings, then by all means, I prefer, and I don't have, in my own personal system, no tone controls, no EQ, no nothing. It's a flat signal. But that doesn't mean that there aren't probably tens of thousands of recordings out there that were just badly done. They were badly mastered. In the early days of the compact disc in the early mid-80s, there was a lot of very, very bad sounding CDs put out. Very, very bad, very thin, very bright. Well, does that mean that you just should not listen to that CD because it's so horrible? Maybe if you had some equalization or tone controls in your system, you could make that into a palatable sounding recording. So I know that fans of the old 78s that are playing them on modern equipment. And there's a whole another world out there if you didn't know that people still played 78s. I mean, if you think that regular vinyl collectors like myself are a little nuts, you should check out this scene because they have to deal with all kinds of things, random equalization at the recording stages and different speeds because 78s were sometimes not mastered at 78. They can vary. So they need very specialized equipment. But one thing I will tell you is that almost every person that's into 78s has an equalizer in their system because of the sample-to-sample variation in the recording quality. And they want to just get the best out of it to actually listen to that or transcribe that onto, compact disc or a digital file or something like that. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you use tone controls? Do you have an equalizer in your system? Do you think that they're beneficial and yeah, that's quite all right and I wouldn't be able to live without it? Or are you a purist? Do you take sort of my bent on at least my audio system, my stereo system, and have a pure signal path? I will admit, having that pure signal path sometimes means that, yeah, that recording sounds really good or really bad, and there's nothing I can do about it to make it sound better. And yet, maybe the guy next door who's got an equalizer or a couple tone controls in his system can make that sound quite good. So maybe there is some benefit. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you, as always, for your comments and for watching.